with the latest on the corporate front, all the market trends, expert opinion, and sound business advice. It is your unique window into the business world, direct from the heart of China.
Hello and welcome to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. Coming up, we will have half an hour of business news and analysis. On today's show, the 2024 World Robot Conference takes place in Beijing. What are the latest advancements in robotics technology? And China's first AAA video game, Black Myth Wukong, has hit the market. What is driving its success? And now let's begin with our top story. The 2024 World Robot Conference took place in Beijing this week. Humanoid robots continue to take center stage during this year's conference. China's humanoid robot sector is set to grow faster than the global average. The market is expected to reach 2.2 billion yuan this year, and by the year 2030, it's going to reach nearly 38 billion yuan. And meanwhile, China has been the largest market for industrial robots for 11 consecutive years. So for more on this, joined us on the line now are Andy Mark, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization, and also Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University. So yeah, I will start with you. China is now the fastest growing robot market in the world. So more than half of the industrial robots installed worldwide were in China. So what are the main factors behind this rapid development of the industrial robots in China?
So there are several factors, I think, that really accelerates the adoption and installation of industrial robots in China. So first of all, we know that China has very large industrial production capacity, and that capacity could really make good use of industrial robots to perform all kinds of industrial productive activities. And particularly, I think, in anticipation of labor shortages and demographic challenges in the future, I think companies are adopting the robotics to provide, these large productive capacity. And also, I think this also has to do with China's strategic move to modernize its industries, to automate its industries, to foster the quality, new productive forces. And also it owns a lot to, policy support and public infrastructure investments, to invest in things like Internet of Things, digital economy, big data. All of these are very essential to lay the foundation of the installation and utilization of robots. And finally, we also see really this kinds of entrepreneurial pursuit, right, to really trying to upgrade the industrial production to adopt robotics. And finally, I think it's also important to know that, China is not only adopting the robots, but they are also really ramping up in terms of their robot production. China's industrial robots market size now is valued at $3 billion, and it's projected to continue to grow at an annual rate of about 12.6%. So I think, this just means that, China's demand and also the supply of industrial robots will continue to expand in the near future.
So Andy, robots are deeply integrated with the new generation of information technology with enhanced automation. What are its main application fields?
Well, I think we have to first be a little bit clear here that industrial robots and humanoid robots and the integration of information technology and robotics are actually somewhat separate things. Diane pointed out very clearly, industrial robots have been a very powerful force in increasing China's competitiveness in the manufacturing sector. And this is not necessarily a new thing that's related to a lot of the excitement we've seen over the last few years about AI and things like that. But industrial automation, including robots, have been a very, very important part of the China success story, I would say. Then when we look at humanoid robots, which is what you mentioned at the beginning, certainly I think this is a very, very new area, and I don't know that there are really any well-established use cases as yet. There's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of hope, but we also have to recognize that it's very, very early days.
Mm.
And then I think similarly with the integration of artificial intelligence and robots.
So, Yan, so what is the current state of humanoid robot technology? What are the major manufacturers pursuing in terms of research and commercialization?
So I agree with Andy. I think, there has been really exciting, research and also a lot of prototypes of the humanoids robots have been, debuting in China. And I think, they really show the potential of utilizing these humanoids in various industries and sectors. So, for example, we have seen the development of, for example, full-size humanoid robots that are capable of running only on electric powers, the so-called Tiangong robots. We also see the robots that really are able to make human-like facial expressions and motions developed by the so-called X robots factories. And I also wanted to just mention some of the Cassia. They just recently debuted the so-called Q family humanoids in Beijing in March this year. And I think it's quite amazing to see the various tasks these robots are able to perform. So these robots are trained with large language models for a few months, and they're able to recognize certain tasks that seem to have very similar to some of the limited human intelligence. So I've seen some of the videos where the robots are asked to pick certain types of vegetables in front of it, and it was able to use the visual recognition technologies to really understand what their tasks are, and that recognition can feed back to the robot's movements, and so it will be able to pick the right vegetables in front of it. It was also able to perform many other interesting tasks, and I think that just shows there's a lot of potential for these humanoids to be used in home services, entertainment, scientific research, manufacturing, and many other, I think, including industrial manufacturing, medical treatments, and so on and so forth. But of course, there are various challenges. I think for one is that these robots need to consistently perform in a high quality, precise level, but also it requires large manufacturing scale and also low cost, right? Low enough for these robots to really have market and commercial value. So I think, yes, there are still, all these development processes, right, that Chinese humanoids robot industry needs to go through. But at the same time, I think in terms of technology, it seems really promising.
So Andy, humanoid robots have rapidly moved from science fiction to reality, driven by the advancements in the AI technology. And a recent report from the World Intellectual Property Organization showed that China filed the highest number of generative AI patents over the past decade. And this is 38,000 in total. So what does this tell us about the progress of this technology in China?
Well, I think that, generally speaking, China has been making enormous strides in all areas of scientific research and technological breakthroughs. I think when we think about robots and AI, perhaps we should be careful not to conflate them too much, because especially when we think about humanoid robots, they're actually getting them to move properly is actually more about sensors, actuators, specialized software that is not necessarily related to AI. So I would maybe put those as two separate topics. But that being said, I think AI certainly can play a very important role in making robots more market ready, I think maybe is the way to put it. Because I think it's exciting to see these tasks that Yan mentioned. But I think, again, most technologies only become successful when there are compelling business use cases, meaning there's a way to make money at them. And one of the challenges of humanoid robots is that they're actually quite complex and costly to design and build. And as far as I'm aware, there is a debate in the world of robotics. Is it better to build more specialized robots that do not necessarily have a humanoid form factor, but are specifically designed for a particular task or set of activities, whether that's cooking dinner, cleaning the house. And I'll use maybe an extreme example. For a few years, we've had these robots that can sweep and mop the floor, right? And these look like, flat cylindrical shapes that can automatically clean your house. As an example of a very specific robot designed for one specific task. So I think there's a lot of questions here. I agree that AI will play an important role. But I think that when we think about especially humanoid robots, it really, I think, is more of an engineering kind of challenge, perhaps, and not necessarily as much one that's related to AI and generative AI in particular.
And so, so technology is the future. China is a world leader in robotics, followed by, South Korea, Japan, India, and United Kingdom and Germany. In the past, we would have expected this kind of technology to come mainly from the United States and Western Europe. But now we see the progress that Asia is making in the development of this technology. So why is there such a shift from traditional places to Asia?
Right. I think, first of all, I think the rise of Asia, has been pretty broad-based in the sense that it's not just about technological advancement, but in terms of promoting, global economic growth. We're seeing that, Asian economies now are playing a more and more important role. And for example, this year, I think the forecast is that more than half of the growth of the world is coming from, Asia. So I think the reason that Asia now is really leading, not only in terms of economic performance, but also in terms of technological advancement, has to do with a few, more of the structural factors. So for one, we know is that this region has been, highly integrated in terms of industrial supply chain and also in terms of the division of labor among this region. So countries are able to collaborate and cooperate in terms of trade, investment, and also technological development. And I think that really provides the advantage for the entire region, not to mention the stable political and security and so on and so forth. All those, I think, are very conducive to this kinds of cooperations and development. And for two, I think it's also long been the case that these countries, Asian economies, have been really investing heavily in their human capital in terms of education, in terms of skill and training. So I think that really helped to provide the human talents and the skill labor for these kinds of technological development. And last but not the least, I think many of the Asian economies are also not shy from utilizing the public investment, the state directives to develop some of the strategic industries and technologies. And I think that's very essential because we know a lot of the technological breakthroughs requires really long periods of high investments. And I think that makes it very essential for the government to be more sort of mission oriented and mobilize resources, encourage the private entrepreneurs to pursue the kinds of innovations. And I think all of these are very important for countries to be able to develop the technological capacities. So I think those are really the successful, factors for these Asian economies.
And Yan, so you mentioned technological breakthrough. So there is a big debate currently about the AI's pros and cons. So what is the status of those debates right now?
Right. I think there are a lot of concerns in terms of, for example, in generative AI, how information can be distorted or fabricated and so on and so forth. And so that could have many different ramifications. So that's some of the concerns. On the other hand, I think when it comes to industrial robots and other robots that can perform certain labor, I think Andy made this very interesting point last time when he talked about the recursive robots, right? That we could build robots and the robots can produce their own, robots. So then I think that creates a very interesting question, which is, what about jobs for humans, right? So either we'll have to think about certain jobs that we have to preserve for human, or we'll have to think about how to provide for the human race when all the jobs are taken away by the robots. So I think there are many interesting questions that will be posed by this kinds of technological development. But I think the good thing is that many countries, especially I think China, has been, trying to stay ahead of the curve and think about how to regulate and also coordinate among different countries in terms of, both developmental guidelines, what kinds of technology to focus on, and how to regulate the uses of these kinds of technologies in order to really, enlarge the benefits, but also minimize the risks and costs.
Well, we're speaking with Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University, and Andy Mark, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. And after a short break, China's first AAA video game has hit the market. What has made it such a success? Stay with us.
Welcome. I'm Elaf Elad, economics professor and member of the Data Science and AI Center at New York University, Shanghai. On the World Today program, you can find in-depth and impartial insight, as well as critical commentary on key trends in the Chinese economy, financial technology, business, and blockchain. To prepare for the world tomorrow, join me on World Today.
You're listening to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. China's first AAA video game has hit the market. On Tuesday, the Hangzhou-based studio Game Science released its blockbuster production Black Myth Wukong globally at a starting price of $38. Inspired by the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West, the action role-playing game is available for PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. It is one of the first games in China to spend years in development with a large budget for advanced graphics. So, Yan, the video game Black Myth Wukong has become an instant hit. So why is that?
Right. I have just watched some, videos about this game, and it's truly impressive. Just the very vivid graphics, and also, the beautiful narratives, and just that surreal kinds of, environments. It's just very attractive for me, who is not really a, professional game player or whatnot. So I think it's really interesting when you think about this is a so-called AAA video games. So it includes very high production costs, very long, production and research cycles. And it's the first one that I think really developed by a Chinese studio with Chinese technicians and programmers using really the cutting edge technologies in VR and others. And it's really based on a traditional classic novel that is so popular that can actually compete with some of the global counterparts. So I think it's truly amazing. It's to me, it's quite a breakthrough in terms of the development of video games by China. And so I think the popularity really showcased how the Chinese culture and also the kinds of technologies are widely accepted by gamers, and it's very interesting to see how this is going to continue on, because I know Game Science are also thinking about producing more along the same Black Myth series. So I think more will be to come.
And so, Andy, so many see this game as a milestone in Chinese gaming industry from technical and artistic perspective. So what are your thoughts, and how big a step is this for China's gaming industry in particular?
Let me offer a bit of context here. So I started playing, I'm old enough that I started playing video games with Atari Pong, right, which was the most basic black and white video game that probably started 40 years ago, if not maybe 50 years ago. So I've been following the development of this industry for quite a number of years, both from an analytical perspective, but also as someone who plays and enjoys gaming. So it is a big milestone in that everyone's paying attention to this. But it's also, I think, a very natural development in that, China has done remarkably well in the gaming sector with a number of mobile games. So I think this is a natural progression. Many of the exciting trends we've seen in China from a technology perspective, from a cultural perspective, from an artistic perspective. And I think Yen made a great point. I mean, what makes a great game is not just a compelling story, but the artwork, the mechanics, the little games within the games, right? Are there battles? Are there puzzles to solve? Do you need to form alliances, etc.? And I think that China's ability to pull this together, you not only have to have specific technologies and specific highly skilled sets of people, but you have to bring them together into a very, very complex, expensive, long-term project. So I think I'm excited by this. I think that it's important to add that video games are, I think, a much more powerful way of transmitting cultural knowledge and values than movies. Video games, because you have to play the characters in them, not just watch the characters on the screen.
So, yeah, as you mentioned, the game is inspired by the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West. So how would you assess the power of gaming platforms to promote a country's history and culture internationally?
Right. I do think this is an important bridge to be able to, showcase that video games could also become a form of art and also help to spread, the Chinese culture, not only, to the Chinese young generations, but also, to the Westerns and, anywhere outside of China. And I think that's very important. I think, when people are playing the game, they naturally will see all the beautiful cultural and, sites. So I know that, for example, Shanxi province, they have showcased some of the promotional videos. They're actually showing the actual sites that, these videos are trying to include. For example, the so-called Xiaoxitian, the small Western paradigms, the Yuhuang Temple, the Tiefor monastery. So I think, many of the bloggers now are, talking about visiting these sites as part of, what they call the cultural, pilgrimage. So I think that is very interesting in the sense that, when you have a popular game that attracts a lot of players, they will be naturally wonder about the story, the culture behind. So I think this is very interesting. This is a very interesting development. I know that, oftentimes in China and also elsewhere, video games is considered as a sort of internet heroin, right? That people are addicted and it, produce more harms than goods. But I think, this is one example where I think this video games, once the content is designed in such a way that could, spread culture and arts, it could actually generate some benefits. At least I'm hoping, that would be the case.
And this is really a cultural bridge that connects China and the world. And also in the past week, the CPC Central Committee and China State Council jointly issued new policy guidelines to give business entities wider access to the China market. The central and local authorities in China will adopt one unified negative list when it comes to granting market access for businesses. The top policymakers have banned local authorities from drafting any extra rules or special negative lists in this regard. The new guidelines also urge the government to widen market access in emerging industries such as deep-sea exploration, aviation, and aerospace. So, yeah, a central government plans to improve China's market access system. What specific measures can we expect, and what signal does it send?
Right. I actually just have written a piece about this, and I think this is largely come out from, the third platinum, which is aimed to deepen China's, economic reform and really modernize the, socialist market economy. So I think this is essential a policy that will not only continue to support and encourage the state-owned enterprises, but also continue to support, encourage, and guide the private enterprises. So I think, the policy is aimed to really provide kinds of equal footing, right, the equal market access to both private and, state enterprises. And in some cases, especially in the manufacturing sector, the market access to foreign companies are also wide open. And I think this is important for the next step of, economic reform and development, in the sense that this will create more healthy competition for all kinds of ownership types of enterprises. And that healthy, competition would be very essential, right, to continue to spur innovations and also to really utilize both the public sector and the private sector towards the common goal. So one of the specific, I think, policies, as you just mentioned, is to really restrict local governments to create certain barriers for, free entries of private enterprises in certain industries, or prevent the enterprises from other localities to enter their specific. And I think that's important to build a unified market. And another specific, I think, policy is, for example, to allow private enterprises to join certain national projects, for example, infrastructure, and also to utilize certain national, scientific and innovation centers. And so I think this is really, again, trying to provide certain, access to the private sector to utilize the, basic research and development products, and also to really continue to encourage private sectors to innovate and to, develop their technologies. So I think all of these are important to understand, within this big sort of objective of continue to modernize the market economy.
Well, we're speaking with Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University, and Andy Mark, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. And that's all the time we have for this edition of Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. Thank you so much for listening.